Ritu is fond of animals. She has so many pets at home. She has a dog, a parrot, and some beautiful fishes in the aquarium. Every day she plays with them. She gives them food and takes care of them very nicely. Now she has decided to have a unique pet, a turtle. She told her father about her wish. Her father told her that she can have a turtle as a pet, but she has to take special care of it. She asked the reason for this. He said that it belongs to a different surrounding, so for its proper growth, you need to provide it all the required facilities. Ritu asked her father to explain a little more about this. Let us see what her father explained to her about the organisms and the surroundings.
Ritu, you know that till now we have gone on vacation to many places of interest. Once, if you remember, we went to the river Ganga in Rishikesh. We climbed the mountains of the Himalayas where it was very cold. We saw many kinds of trees on those mountains, oaks, pines and deodars, very different from the ones near our home on the plains. In yet another trip, we traveled to Rajasthan and moved on camels through the hot desert. From there, we collected different kinds of cactus plants. Finally, we went on a trip to Puri and visited the sea beach dotted with casuarinas trees. Do you realize that all these places were so different from one another? Some were cold, some very hot and dry, and some places so humid. And yet, all of them had many organisms, living creatures of various kinds. Can you think of a place on earth where there may not be any living creatures?
Ritu thought of places near her home. Inside the house, she checked the cupboards, thinking that there may not be any living organisms in it. But she found one tiny spider there. Outside the home too, there did not seem to be any place she could think of that did not have living creatures of some kind or the other. Ritu started thinking and reading about faraway places. People have even found tiny living organisms in the openings of volcanoes.
Trees, creepers, small and big animals, birds, snakes, insects, rocks, soil, water, air, dry leaves, dead animals, mushrooms and moss may be only some of the objects that are present in the forest. Ritu, can you give some examples of living organisms in the world?
No.
We know that objects like chair or a table are not alive. Similarly, we do know that we are alive and so are the other people of the world. We also see animals around us that are so full of life. Dogs, cats, monkeys, squirrels, insects and many others.
How do we know that something is living?
Often, it is not so easy to decide. We are told that plants are living things, but they do not appear to move like a dog or a pigeon. On the other hand, a car or a bus can move. Still, we consider them as non-living. Plants and animals appear to grow in size with time. But then, at times, clouds in the sky also seem to grow in size. Does it mean that clouds are living?
No. So, how does one distinguish between living and non-living things? Do living things have some common characteristics that make them very different from the non-living?
Ritu, you are a wonderful example of a living being. What characteristics do you have which make you different from a non-living thing? Some of these characteristics are perhaps common to all living things. All living things need food and is very essential to both animals and to human beings. We have also learnt that plants make their own food through the process of photosynthesis. Animals depend on plants and other animals for their food. Food gives organisms the energy needed for them to grow. Organisms also need this energy for other life processes that go on inside them. Ritu, does the frock which you wore 4 years ago still fit you? You cannot wear it anymore, isn't it? You must have grown taller during these years. You may not realize it, but you are growing all the time. And in few more years, you will become an adult. Similarly, plants also grow. Look around you and see a few plants of a particular type. Some are very small and young. Some are grown. They may all be in different stages of growth. Look at the plants after a few days or weeks. You may find that some of them have grown in size. Growth seems to be common to all living things. Can we live without breathing? When we inhale, the air moves from outside to the inside of our body. When we breathe out, the air moves from inside our body to outside. Breathing is part of a process called respiration. In respiration, the oxygen from the air is breathed in and carbon dioxide produced in this process is breathed out. The process of breathing in animals like cows, buffaloes, dogs or cats is similar to that of the humans. Observe any one of these animals while they are taking rest and notice the movement of their abdomen. This slow movement indicates that they are breathing. Respiration is necessary for all living organisms. It is through respiration that the body finally obtains energy from the food it takes. Some animals may have different mechanisms for the exchange of gases, which is a part of the respiration process. For example, earthworms breathe through their skin. Fish, we have learnt, have gills for using oxygen dissolved in water. The gills absorb oxygen dissolved in the water.
Do plants also respire? Exchange of gases in plants mainly takes place through their leaves.
The leaves take in air through tiny pores in them and use the oxygen. They give out carbon dioxide to the air. We have learnt that in the presence of sunlight, plants use carbon dioxide in the air to produce their own food and give out oxygen. Plants produce their food only during the daytime, whereas respiration in them takes place day and night. The amount of oxygen released in the process of food preparation by plants is much more than the oxygen they use in respiration. How do you respond if you suddenly step on a sharp object like a thorn while walking barefoot? How do you feel when you see or think about your favorite food? You suddenly move from a dark place into bright sunlight.
What happens?
Your eyes shut themselves automatically for a moment till they adjust to the changed bright surroundings. Your favorite food, bright light, and a thorn in the above situations are some examples of change in your surroundings. All of us respond immediately to such changes. Changes in our surroundings that make us respond to them are called stimuli.
Do other animals also respond to stimuli?
Observe the behavior of animals when the food is served to them. Do you find them suddenly becoming active on seeing the food? When you move towards a bird, what does it do? Wild animals run away when bright light is flashed towards them. Similarly, cockroaches begin to move to their hiding places if the light in the kitchen is switched on at night.
Do plants also respond to stimuli?
Flowers of some plants bloom only at night. In some plants, flowers close after sunset. In some plants like mimosa, commonly known as touch-me-not, leaves close or fold when someone touches them. These are some examples of responses of plants towards changes in their surroundings. Place a potted plant in a room a little away from a window through which sunlight enters for some time during the day. Continue watering the plant for a few days. Does the plant grow upright like plants out in the open? Note the direction in which it bends. If it is not growing upright, do you think this may be in response to some stimuli? All living things respond to changes around them. All living things take food. Not all the food that is eaten is really used. Only a part of it is utilized by the body.
What happens to the rest?
This has to be removed by the body as waste. Our body also produces some wastes in other life processes. The process of getting rid of these wastes by the living organisms is known as excretion.
Do plants also excrete?
Yes, they do. However, the mechanisms in plants are a little different. Some harmful or poisonous materials do get produced in plants as waste. Some plants find it possible to store the waste products within their parts in a way that they do not harm the plant as a whole. Some plants remove waste products as secretions. Excretion is another characteristic common to all living things. Have you ever seen nests of some birds like pigeons? Many birds lay their eggs in the nest. Some of the eggs may hatch and young birds come out of these. Animals reproduce their own kind. The mode of reproduction may be different in different animals. Some animals produce their young ones through eggs. Some animals give birth to the young ones. Plants also reproduce. Like animals, plants also differ in their mode of reproduction. Many plants reproduce through seeds. Plants produce seeds which can germinate and grow into new plants. Some plants also reproduce through parts other than the seeds. For example, a part of a potato with a bud grows into a new plant. Plants also reproduce through cuttings. Would you like to grow a plant in this way yourself? Take a cutting from a rose or a henna plant. Fix it in the soil and water it regularly. What do you observe after a few days? It may not be easy to grow plants from cuttings. living things produce more of their own kind through reproduction. It takes place in many different ways for different organisms. There are various ways in which animals move. They move from one place to another and also show other body movements.
What about plants? Do they also move?
Plants are generally anchored in soil, so they do not move from one place to another. However, various substances like water, minerals, and the food synthesized by them moves from one part of the plant to other. Have you noticed any other kind of movement in plants? Opening or closing of flowers? Do you recall how some plants show movements in response to certain stimuli? We also have some non-living things that move, of course. A bus, car, a small piece of paper, clouds, and so on. Is there something different in these movements from the movements of living beings? Yet another common characteristic is that living beings die. Because organisms die, organism types can survive over thousands of years only if they reproduce their own kind. One single organism may die without ever reproducing, but the type of organism can exist only if there is reproduction. We see that all living things seem to have some common characteristics. They all need food, respire, respond to stimuli, reproduce, show movement, grow, and die. Do we find some non-living things that also show some of these characteristics? Cars, bicycles, clocks, and the water in the river move. The moon moves in the sky. A cloud grows in size right in front of our eyes. Can such things be called living? We ask ourselves, do these objects also show the other characteristics of all living beings? In general, something that is living may have all the characteristics that we have discussed, while non-living things may not show all these characteristics at the same time.
Is this always true? Do we always find that living things definitely show all the characteristics of the living that we have discussed? Do we also find that non-living things may show only some of these characteristics and never all of them?
To understand this a little better, let us look at a specific example. Consider any seed, say green gram. Is it living? It can stay in a shop for months and not show any growth or some of the other characteristics of life. However, we bring the same seed and plant it in soil, water it, and it turns into a whole plant. Did the seed need food? Did it excrete, grow, or reproduce when it was in the shop for many months? We see that there can be cases where we cannot easily say that a thing has all the characteristics that we have discussed for it to be called living. What then is life? You must have seen the magnifying glass and observed that when we see the objects through magnifying lens, they seem to be bigger than their actual size. Let us now do an activity. Take a used electric bulb. Remove its filament. Fill water till half of the bulb. Now see a book through this bulb. You will observe that the letters of the book are looking bigger. We cannot see those things which are very small. We cannot see the mouth and antenna of ants and other small insects with our naked eyes. When you touch a flower, a yellow-colored powder sticks to your finger. Do you know what this is? How can you identify that? All these things are very small. We cannot see them with naked eyes, but we can see them under a microscope. Living things which we can see only under microscope are called microorganisms. Let us first discuss what a microscope is. Microscope is an instrument through which we can see the minute things that we cannot see with our naked eyes. It works as a hand or magnifying lens. But it is much more powerful. In a microscope, there are two main components, the structural component and the visual component. Structural component includes the head, body, base and the arm. Visual component includes the eyepiece, objective, nosepiece, coarse and fine adjustment knobs, stage, aperture, etc. Let us now see some microorganisms through the microscope. You must have heard from your elders that we should not put wet spoon in pickle jar. Do you know why? Because it will spoil the pickle. Have you ever observed the bread or vegetable that is kept packed for a couple of days? You must have observed that they become rotten and there is a foul smell. You must have observed the thin grey colored substance on it. After a few days, this grey color substance turns black. Observe this rotten material under the microscope. The tiny thread-like structures is called mold. The mold develops on spoiled material and is able to produce new mold. It grows, so we can say that it is living. Let us now see how these microorganisms are useful to us. Take the watery substance from curd. Put a drop of this substance on a glass slide. Cover it gently with another slide. Observe it under microscope. The microorganism that you see under the microscope is called bacteria. Bacteria are in different shapes. The bacterium in curd is helpful to us as it helps to convert milk into curd. Some bacteria cause diseases in human beings, plants as well as in animals. These bacteria spread from one person to other person and cause various types of diseases. They spread all over the world. There is no place in the world that is free from bacteria. When we suffer from a disease, the doctor advises you to take boiled water. Let us find out the reason. Collect water samples from various water sources like pond, well, borewell. Keep them separately. Take the water from each of these samples and put drop of it on different slides. Now observe them under the microscope. You will find that in all water samples, different types of microorganisms are present. So we can say that microorganisms are present everywhere, although they are not visible to the naked eye. Through these activities, we observed few of them, but there is a large variety of microorganisms and they are all part of the living world. Push your hand deep inside a sack of wheat. Do you find it warm inside? There is some heat being produced inside the sack of wheat. The seeds respire and in that process give out some heat. It may not be very easy to answer our question, what then is life? However, looking at all the diversity of living beings around us, we can conclude that life is beautiful.